Hello, Chris. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I am well, thanks, Elisha. How are you? This has been a great opportunity. I'm so happy we're getting a chance to talk.
Beautiful, my man, and same here. Well, thank you so very much for being here, Chris. You say, I truly appreciate you. And you say, Chris, oftentimes I love to thank my guests for two things. And I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So, firstly, I want to say, thank you, Chris, for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you did invest in yourself. And oftentimes, Chris, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. Let's say some couple of months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Chris, there was this very tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves never hold dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Chris, just recently I was on that same road, and this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree. You see, the mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance, and immediately I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it. Beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. And not just mangoes now, Chris. I'm talking about ripe mangoes. It was such a lovely experience that day, and I was so, so excited. Here is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Chris that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing. Your philosophies, your journey, your insight, your work, the impact your work is having, Chris, and now you are offering your solutions. These stuffs are beautiful. So I've got to say thank you for doing that to yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was nothing Elisha could do about it. Thanks so much, Chris.
That's a great story, and I appreciate your sharing that.
Beautiful. So let's get right into it. You see, I am quite excited to have you on the show today, Chris, for a few reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Chris, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information, and not just knowledge alone, but the application of it. And you see, my man, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness ignorance, been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason why I'm excited to have the incredible Chris on the show is for the sake of the audience. You see, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So those folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced, Chris, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or your professional journey, because right now we are so curious. We want to know how Chris got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Chris, over to you.
So I am an executive coach. The biggest thing is that I had flatlined in the hospital at 40 years old in the middle of a really successful career. And then so in my time afterwards, I've been trying to piece together how I can use that to help others. And so I use that in my framework of when I coach people. And so the two biggest things that I feel like I try to encourage those that I'm speaking to, or whether they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, at different stages of their career, is I just recently wrote a book called Balls and Brains. It's a framework for living your best life by overcoming fears and maximizing strengths. So it's the two things I say to people all the time is to do some soul searching to find out what scares you and what holds you back from being the best version of yourself. And then secondly, knowing what you're really good at and going all in on that as opposed to trying to play defense on your weaknesses. I encourage people to go full offense on their strengths.
Overcoming fear and maximizing strength. Wow, I got that. I got that. So let us talk about the reason why people, they feel stuck. So why do successful people still feel stuck?
What I find oftentimes with my clients is that they've chosen a line of work and a profession really out of fear or just really out of just needing to pay the bills and hadn't given themselves the opportunity and ability to try to find out what they're running from, what's the fear that keeps them playing small, and take a real look at how they're spending their days, their weeks, and their months, and how much of that are they actually playing to their strengths. Because oftentimes you'll find people just working hard, getting up every day, every week of the month and the year, just trying to get through every day and just to get a paycheck. And it takes its real toll on them. I say that, I try to help people going from grinding. So every day going and just kind of grinding at this is maybe there's another way. And can I get you from grinding to flowing? And that's what oftentimes I find with people who are even successful. They're grinding, but they're playing from fear as opposed to playing from their strengths.
I got that. Okay, but still on the matter of fear, what hidden fears do you think limits people's potential?
I think it's fear of failure is a lot of it. So even you'll see this with high performing people is they get themselves a bit into a prison and they are fearful of at least even appearing to fail. So they'll keep doing this. They feel like their whole identity is tied to their success, and it's exhausting and terrifying. I also think that the fear limits people and they play smaller than they could. So it's one of the things that a question I give people, and I actually have it in my book. And it's by a gentleman named Peter Crone. And he asks this question. He says, who would you be in the absence of your concerns? Who would you be in the absence of your concerns? So I recommend people think about that because that person that you would be if you were playing full out and weren't operating from fear, that's the person you're actually meant to be.
That's so true. And what you're doing is really, really important because there are a lot of people who are currently stuck, and they're stuck because of these hidden fears. And so helping them overcome fears and maximize their strengths, that's amazing. That's amazing. So let us talk about your book briefly, Balls and Brains. What is the inspiration behind it? And how was the writing process like?
So I tried to make something that's accessible to an audience to try to get their attention and to say, as opposed to trying to fix everything, what's the two most important things that I've seen for people when they hire me or hire any other coach to really uncover them to be the best version of themselves. So I do normally a 5-step program, and these 2 steps are the first 2 parts of it. So I named it Balls and Brains just because it would be an attention grabber of a name, right? I mean, it's like in this day and age of, as you said at the beginning, there's no shortage of information out there, right? Lots of information and lots of data. And how do you get people's attention? So that title about Balls and Brains is meant to do that. The balls part of it is about identifying and overcoming fear. And the brains part is not about being smart in school or doing anything related to that. It's about being really aware of what you're really good at and going all in on that as opposed to trying to, work on your deficiencies. So the example I give on that is Michael Jordan was, considered by most people to be the greatest professional basketball player of all time. And if you look at the 2 things that drove him, one was his work ethic, right? Worked harder than anybody. So on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 10. And then the other part is talent is what you're really good at. And so his talent on that was a 10. So a 10 times a 10 was 100. And he was the Michael Jordan of basketball. Now, he still applied that same work ethic when he tried to play professional baseball, right? He had played it in high school. He had played it in college, decided he wanted to try to do it at the professional level. And did that for a couple of years, applied the same work ethic that he applied to basketball. but at best he was a 5 out of a 10 in terms of baseball, right? And eventually said back to basketball where I'm a 10. So I use that as an example that had he just stayed with baseball and still done that 10 applied to a 5 talent level, he was going to top out at a 50. But he realized and put in his investment against the thing that he was really naturally good at, which was the basketball part of it. So a 10 times a 10 becomes 100. So I recommend people, sometimes I have them take this thing called the Clifton Strength Finder, or there's other things that you could do online, to a diagnostic that actually identifies what you're really good at, because it might not be all the things that you're doing in your daily job. So for example, identify 5 things that you're the strongest at. Oftentimes I'll then ask people, how much of this are you doing in your job? And they'll say maybe 1 or 2 of those things. So 3 other things that they're really good at doesn't even come into their job. But meanwhile, there's 3, 5, 10 other things in their job that they're not really good at, right? So that adds to the grinding. They're not that great at it. So how do I get them to identify that and not then completely change their career, but how do we maybe redesign your job or evolve you into your next role that you're playing to your strengths as opposed to grinding on a daily basis, doing things that you're not actually meant to be doing here on this earth.
And I tell you, a lot of people are actually in that situation. A lot of folks in some 9 to 5 that they don't even belong there. I tell you, Chris. And thank you for all you're doing. So what are some, ways people can use to improve their lives daily?
So the first thing is I'd go back to that question. Ask yourself, who would you be in the absence of your concerns? And the reason I love this is because it doesn't ask you what you're afraid of, right? It just says, you know what you're afraid of. Now I want you to think about what your life would be like if you didn't have those fears. Those fears weren't holding you back. So who would you be? And it allows you to think about the person you'd be on a daily basis or a weekly basis. It can relate to work, but it also can relate to other parts of your life. And once you then have that, right, this is what they talk about in religious texts, as well as recommendations on how to manifest. The whole idea around these things is to know what it would feel like and think about being that person before you're actually that, right? So thinking about who you'd be in the absence of those concerns gives you a North Star of where you could be going and what you could be doing. So that's the first thing I recommend people do. The second thing is I mentioned that Clifton's Strengths Finder or other things you could do online, just to take a real diagnostic that'll take you 45 minutes and it will lay out, these are the things that you're really good at. And be honest with yourself. How much of them are you actually doing and how much of it are you investing in yourself to get better at the things that you're already good at? Because that's the way that not only you'll feel better about your day-to-day and week-to-week life, but that's how you'll be more successful, because it's a lot easier to get really good at something that you're naturally good at than to get just okay at something that you're not, right? And then, as you know, if you're working for somebody, if you're working for a company, they want to hire the best person for their role. And the more you're playing to your strengths, the more you'll earn rewards on that, the more your bosses will see that you're in the right role, the more the things that you can be doing to help them look better. And you're then playing to your strengths and you'll feel a lot more in flow than you will feel like you're grinding every day.
I completely agree, and that's so true. That's so true. So I want us to understand your approach even more. So who are your ideal client and how do you help them?
So my clients are anywhere from their 20s, 30s, 40s normally, either at the beginning or middle stages of their career. And they're realizing that things could be better. And they're starting to really see that either they need to make a change or they're realizing that they're not feeling as much in flow as they know that they can. So this whole idea is oftentimes working with people who are, say, that in their early 20s and they're still figuring out what they want to do. I made this kind of structure for the 20-something-year-old version of me that I would have loved for somebody to work with me on these things because it would have saved me a lot of time. Or even have it touch base with me in my 30s or 40s, as opposed to me going through and grinding and then, getting to a point where I flatlined in the hospital and then they told me, all right, so you're okay now. They put a pacemaker in my chest and they said, you probably have another 50 years. And I was like, what am I going to do with another 50 years? And what I really wanted to do with this is how do I identify and help other people that it won't take them, until their health fails and they flatline in a hospital bed at 40. How can I help you before that? And so that's who I normally work with, is people on that. So it's a 5-step program. We identify their fears, their strengths, and then based off of that, let's reset your goals. Now that we're going to liberate you from what's been holding you back in the past. And then we talk about, we deal with mindset. So what's the stuff that you're going to need to be changing and how you think and approach the world on a daily basis? Because it's not just snap my fingers and you're a different person. And then lastly, it's around habits. It's the stuff that you do every day, right? So part of it comes from the mindset, but a lot of it comes from habits. How are you spending your day? And that's what they always say, is a lot of times people don't choose their destiny, but they choose their habits, and their habits form their destiny.
So true. And that sounds like a very effective approach. That's a beautiful one. So, what about this one? What is the best advice you've ever received?
There's a saying from a philosopher from hundreds of years ago, and he said, "Be yourself and be that well." So, be yourself and be that well. And I love that, and I eventually got to that, as opposed to us trying to force ourselves to be somebody that we're not, is to get tapped into who you are, and then don't just sit back and take life as it comes. Go all in on who you are. So an analogy I think about, and I heard this recently in a Netflix biography about the comedian Eddie Murphy. And he said at this stage in his life, he feels like he's in a sailboat as opposed to in a rowboat, right? So in a rowboat, it was just him grinding against the water, against the elements, moving very slowly, exhausting himself. And he's now tapped into, he's like, all right, well, now if I'm in a sailboat, I still need to work. I still need to use how to use it. But there are other things in life, such as the natural wind and the way that you can actually leverage that so that you're not just doing it all on your own. And you're not just sitting back and letting it take you wherever. You're still steering it, but you're actually leveraging what the world and the universe has to offer you, as opposed to feeling like you need to do it all on your own.
Beautiful, and I got that. And thank you for sharing that, Chris. I'm gonna take that as a final thought. So, for folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about the wonderful stuff you're doing, or make a purchase of your fantastic book, how can that be possible?
So my name is very simple. It's Chris Woods with an S, and I'm a coach. So my website is Chris Woods Coach. So chriswoodscoach.com. There you can get the link to the Amazon store for the book, as well as includes more details about how I work with people. And then if you wanted to reach out to me, there's a way to just connect with me via that website. So I'd love to hear from people who this message resonates with, and I'm here to help.
Beautiful. So that's gonna be the end of the show, Chris. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing these lovely things.
Thank you for having me.